Get that Kohl's cash ready because Kohl Rosario could end up being a starter for KU basketball. We're going to break down the candidacy, the legitimacy after a latest article kind of pokes at it possibly being the truth.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is a bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks, and we're going to be talking today, could Kohl Rosario be a starter for KU this season after coming in as a freshman? Not a McDonald's All-American, but I don't know. Could the hype surpass that point for Kohl Rosario? And thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show, whether you're making it your first listen or anywhere you get your podcast or on our YouTube page. Thank you to you for tuning in to us here on the show. So there was a recent article in The Athletic by CJ Moore. It's called 6 College Basketball Freshmen Who Impressed This Summer and Could Surprise in 2025 to 2026. And as you would expect, as we're talking about this today, Kohl Rosario was one of those 6 players. There's also some fun quotes from Bill Self. Some of that we'll get to. Highly recommend reading the article yourself. I'm not going to get to everything in the article, and you can do that by subscribing to The Athletic. I mean, it's worth the price just for CJ's work alone. But anyway, it makes sense when you think about there being a need on this team for shooting, and you think about who are the best shooters on the team. One of them probably is going to be Darren Peterson because he's just going to be like the best at everything on the team. But besides that, who are the best shooters on the team? You know, Jayden, Dawson, I guess maybe Guy and Gala, and Kohl Rosario. It feels like those would be the next 3 that you would kind of talk about in some form or fashion. With Ngala, I don't know that the expectation is for him to be a rotation guy. So then you're talking about Dawson and Rosario being the best shooters on the team among rotation players. Again, maybe sans Darren Peterson. We'll see where that goes with all of this. And so from that standpoint, if you're looking at somebody to be a complementary piece to what this lineup can offer, and having 3-point shooting be one of those things, Kohl Rosario certainly comes to the top of the list. So I want to break down some of those Bill Self quotes, what that candidacy would look like and what it means in terms of for other players and who he is competing with for that specific role on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We are brought to you on today's episode by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all the financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have that full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch's built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is just for you. They do the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I personally love the way that it looks, presents the data to you. They have very easy to see, graphs and color coding, makes it a lot easier to kind of digest in your brain. So don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. So this is one of the quotes from Bill Self in the article from CJ Moore of The Athletic. Again, I'm not going to get to all of the article. Subscribe yourself for that. But he said, we knew that when we got him that he was a good shooter. We knew he was a good athlete. I probably did not know that he is quite as bouncy as he is. I probably didn't know the level of competitiveness that he has. And then he later goes on and in a different quote, he says he's definitely going to play when asked by CJ if he'll end up being a starter, and he said, and probably play a lot. So that was kind of a non-answer, and I think it was a non-answer just because Bill Self doesn't know. I think it's an open competition still, obviously. I think Jayden Dawson, I think Elmarko Jackson, Melvin Council, I think those guys are in the running to, be starters along with Darren Peterson, Trey White, and Floyd Badunga. And so, it's going to get determined how these next couple of months of, practice and everything go, that it's not just set in stone. But the answer, he's definitely going to play and probably play a lot. That certainly leans on the side of maybe he's closer to being a starter. We've had conversations about, is Kohl Rosario going to be a part of the rotation? Is he going to be the 8th man? I think that quote certainly makes you feel like, and certainly tells you that he is part of the rotation. He's going to be part of the rotation. That's kind of a given. The he could play a lot part kind of makes it feel like it's closer to the idea of him starting than it is he going to be at the back end of the rotation. That's how it certainly feels and comes across to me. And I just like, the more I think about his game and what he brings to the table, I can't really help but think of guys like, if we're talking freshmen here, Xavier Henry, Gradey Dick, Johnny Furphy, Ochai Agbaji, Christian Braun, guys who were kind of these, shooting guard wing type players who earned roles as young players. And maybe, I shouldn't look at Xavier Henry and Gradey Dick here, because both those guys are, McDonald's All-Americans and eventual high NBA draft picks. But like, all of those guys are guys that earned playing time as a freshman and big playing time as a freshman. And especially in the case of like Furphy and Ochai over the back half of the season, obviously because Ochai, that was his only choice with getting the red shirt pulled. But by kind of starting to take off and by being like solid wing shooters who did at least something else well. Like, all of them had flaws as a freshman. Like Gradey Dick had some flaws on the defensive end. Johnny Furphy had some defensive flaws, or, I guess half court creation flaws, you could say, like with Ochai and Christian Braun. Like, they weren't asked to create offense. They were asked to kind of just hit open shots for the offense side of the ball, right? They weren't complete players, but they were theoretically good shooters. I mean, I think in the case of all young players, you're going to be inconsistent shooting the basketball. Like, and so that's probably kind of my view of Kohl Rosario. Like, there's probably going to be games where he goes 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 from 3. There's probably going to be other games where he goes, 3 for 5 or 4 for 6 or whatever, right? And so all of them had some flaws, maybe some inconsistent defense in some cases, maybe not complete offensive games or whatever, but they had shooting potential, even again, if it was in and out from night to night as a young player, to pair with, say, like in Christian Braun's case, to pair with good hustling and solid rebounding for that position, to pair with Ochai Agbaji's athleticism and defensive potential, to pair with Johnny Furphy's athleticism and rebounding ability, to pair with Gradey Dick's rebounding ability and at least playmaking on defense, right? He did a good job of getting steals and stuff. And so it's not hard to see Rosario as having some of those, in fact, a lot of those traits, as somebody who can be at least when he's at his peak, a good shooter, somebody who can be a good rebounder for a guard, somebody who's going to hustle, somebody who's a good athlete. And when you look at some of those players, Ochai Agbaji wound up playing 26 minutes per game his first year. He started 16 of his 22 games after he got that red shirt pulled. Christian Braun started 5 of the 31 games, so he still did get 5 starts as a freshman, 18.4 minutes per game. And if they didn't have Isaiah Moss that year, like, it probably ends up being a lot more there, right? Johnny Furphy started 19 of 33 games that he played in. He played 24 minutes per game. And part of that was because Kevin McCullough gets injured, but still played a lot. So point being, there's just a lot that I think Bill Self values that Kohl Rosario has, and that we've seen this archetype kind of work wonders and play big minutes, even as a freshman. And so obviously competing for the starting role doesn't just come down to him. It comes down to who you're competing with, how those other players perform. So I want to get into that next, but it definitely does feel like a situation where I think in my last minutes projection, I had Rosario around like 10, 11 minutes per game. That's definitely going to be soaring up, if not projecting him to be a starter. So I want to break that down a little bit more. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season's almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. That's right, just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's a lot that you can use on college football for the weekend, NFL for the weekend. Baseball's about to be getting into the postseason here. You can even get early futures on the KU basketball season. Darren Peterson's going off at plus 850 to win the Wooden Award. You can get Kansas to win the national championship at FanDuel at 20-1 odds. You can, even if you think Samaya Nichols is going to like ball out, you can even bet on the Kansas women's basketball team to win the national title over there as well. So check all those out over at FanDuel. And if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Supply House. And with Supply House, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House's next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. That's supplyhouse.com. Sign up for free. Use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Again, bonus episode. So when you look at Rosario, I think part of it, is he going to start or not, is going to depend on what Bill Self wants. Is he going to go with the best five? Is he going to go with the best fit? Is he determined that he wants another wing out there type player? Does he want shooting? Does he not care? Because there could be a situation that, Trey White's at the 4, Fleury's at the 5, Peterson basically at the 1 defensively. Maybe he's more of a 3, but regardless, that leaves 2 starting spots. And could there be a world where Bill Self plays Melvin Council and Elmarko Jackson as both starters? Yes, absolutely there could. Maybe he says, though, you know what, I would like to have the shooting. We're going to start one of whoever wins out on the competition of Jayden Dawson versus Kohl Rosario. And then we'll have one of Melvin Council, Elmarko Jackson for the other ball handler that's out there for KU. And then the other guys will clearly play off the bench. That would certainly make sense. Maybe it's a situation where, do you go with the best 5? Do you go with defense? Do you go with athleticism? Do you go for the shooting? Do you go for the fit? What if Kohl Rosario just ends up being one of the 5 best players on the team, in addition to being a good fit? And so I think I kind of went from, it's Kohl Rosario versus Samis Calderon for that 8th spot in the rotation to now kind of having more of a conversation of Kohl Rosario versus Jayden Dawson, who's going to win out there. Because I think it seems like it's a real competition to where if Rosario wins that out, then it just comes down to, does Bill Self, want to start more of that type player or more of another ball handler? Is it a fit thing again? Is it just who's the better overall player between him and the other kind of lead guard with Council or Elmarko, whichever loses out between those two? So the way I almost look at it too is that between Rosario and Dawson, I think the idea is going to be get them a combined 40 minutes. Maybe they're both great and maybe it ends up being get them a combined 50 minutes, or maybe one of them struggling and it's get a combined 35 minutes. But like give or take, I think the idea is going to be, okay, give them combined around 40 minutes. And then if you're giving them combined 40 minutes, that guarantees one of them is on the floor basically at all times. And I guess there could be some crossover, but it basically guarantees that you're going to have a game's worth of at least having another shooter on the floor. And that's helpful for the spacing of the offense and making life easier on just a lot of the other players. Obviously, if you look at it from a standpoint of Rosario versus Jayden Dawson, I think Dawson's the more experienced player. He has the more college-proven defensive side of the ball. He also is the more proven three-point shooter, the more consistent three-point shooter. I think Rosario's ceiling of a three-point shooter might be even higher. Dawson's a solid athlete, but Rosario is another level as an athlete. Rosario also gives you more rebounding and even more athleticism, which is going to help in the open court. So, the more you start talking yourself into some of the traits, there is a world where, and we might be in that world right now, where Rosario ends up starting. At the very least, he's ahead of Dawson. I think right now I'm kind of leaning to a point where it's maybe it ends up being 50-50 between the two, but it feels like the arrow's pointing up for Dawson, or for Rosario, excuse me. And it wouldn't shock me if Kohl Rosario is not a starter for the first game of the season, but similar to Furphy, similar to Ochai, obviously different reasons there, but for whatever reason, and I guess you would say similar to Isaiah Moss, come January, come late December, Bill Self says, you know what, this kid's starting to get it. He's a good fit because he helps us with 3-point shooting, and now he's going to be a starter. So I think if you gave me, I don't know, a single digit number of over-under starts for Kohl Rosario, Christian Braun had 5. If you told me over-under 5 starts for Kohl Rosario this year, I think I would actually take over. I don't know that I'm going to predict it for the first game of the season, but definitely come season's end, I could see that being the case. It feels like his stock is just kind of skyrocketing, which I think is a good thing for KU, right? You want your players who are good shooters and somebody who has high potential and could raise the ceiling of this team like Kohl Rosario to perform, because it does just that. It raises the ceiling and the potential of this team. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcasts. including on our YouTube page. Don't forget to check out our Wings preview where we talked a little Trey White. We also have a football episode coming out talking a little KU Wagner. So check all those out anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We'll see you next time with Locked On Jayhawks.